My name is Reesheda Graham Washington, and I am the CEO and Principal Consultant of RGW Consulting. RGW are obviously my initials, but RGW also stands for Reimagining and Generating Wonder, as this is typically what we help organizations to do around all kinds of things as it pertains to organizations, strategic planning and development, community development and transformation, and oftentimes with a focus and a centrist on diversity, equity, and inclusion. This morning is no exception to the rule, as we will be working with the entire village of Glen Ellyn and its constituents to examine the ways in which we are already up to goodness as it pertains to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And also we will come alongside Glen Ellyn to help us to continue to think about innovative ways to get curious with ourselves about how to further integrate diversity, equity, and inclusion into the work that we do across the village. So thank you all for being here. My associate lead consultant, Mickey Grace, is also on the call and with us for the journey today. She's serving as a process observer and also ensuring quality on our end. And another one of our associates, Benjamin Henning, will be joining us shortly. As typically these meetings are held on my Zoom link account, he was over there in a party of one, and he will be joining us on this link soon. And so thank you all for being here. I see that we have about 65 people on the call. And so just know that there's a whole audience out there, even though we can't see them all. That feels important to say in 2021 on Zoom. There are people definitely tuned in and watching us and listening to what we have to share this morning. And so without any further ado, I want to just take a minute to name all of the folks who are on the call and give you a quick moment just to say good morning and welcome your community into the space. So we have Mark Franz, who's the village manager, Andre Wright, who is the treasurer on the board of trustees for the Glen Ellyn Public Library. We have Brian Caputo, who's the president of the board for the College of DuPage. We also have Melissa Kachowski, who's the superintendent of District 41, Dr. Raquel Wilson, who's the assistant director of student services for District 87 for equity and diversity. And then finally, last but not least, we have Melissa Cunningham, who's an instructional coach for District 89. I would be remiss to name that Dawn Bussey is also on the call with us this morning, and she serves as the executive director of the Glen Ellyn Public Library. And I suspect that we will have a representative from the Glen Ellyn Public Library. Julia will be joining us momentarily. She is actually logging in now, so we'll see her in just a few moments. So
she's with the Park District, Reesheda. She's the Park District representative.
What did I say?
The library, you're fine.
Yes. Yes, I'm working on it, Mark. It's right here. It's right here. It's coming. So the Glen Ellyn Park District, yes. So Julia will be joining us, and also Ben, who's a consultant for RGW, will be joining us as well. And so we'll start with Mark, and we'll just take a couple minutes to go around and allow each of you to speak to just a 1-minute introduction and why this work is important to you, to loosen us up a little bit. Clearly I need it. I suspect you all do too. And then we will jump right in. Let's start with Mark. Take it away.
Great. Thanks, Reesheda. Appreciate all your work on this. And good morning, everyone. My name is Mark Franz. I've been the village manager for about 10 years. Excited about this this process. And we've had one kind of get to know you session, was that a week ago? And I think it's clear that this is a journey that we're on, and we're excited to get this process started today and start listening to all of you. So appreciate the 60 plus or 70 plus people in attendance. Excited to have this conversation. I've got a few staff, village staff members that are in the audience as well, but I just wanted to acknowledge Trustee Kelly Christensen's been kind of our lead person on this, and appreciate all her efforts. And I'm sure she'll chime in at some point this morning as well. So thank you and good morning.
Thank you so much, Mark. And now we will hear from Andre.
Hi, good morning, everyone. First and foremost, I would like to give a very special thank you to my amazing wife, Tanya Lopez, for making some delicious pancakes this morning to get the day started. If you have not had her pancakes, you're truly missing out. So, so my name is Andre, right? And you know, Reesheda, I want to thank you and your staff for all the work and the efforts that you have put together to get us all together and have this really critical and important discussion. I serve as the treasurer and library trustee for the Glen Ellyn Public Library. I wanted to share a statistic that I came across from the Gallup poll. So it states that 45% of American workers have experienced discrimination and harassment in the past year. So I think if you dig deep into that statistic, I think that really underscores the importance of why we're here today. So I look forward to the discussion that we're going to have and sharing some really great information that everyone else will also share today on the call.
Thank you so much, Andre. And now can we hear from Dr. K? Take it away.
Good morning. Just want to wish everybody a happy Saturday. You know, we've been sharing some of the conversations that happened at our last meeting internally, and just looking forward to hearing where today is going to take us.
Thank you so much. And now we will hear from Melissa.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. And first and foremost, thank you for allowing me to be part of this process today. So I work in District 89 as an instructional coach, and we've been in the process for the last few years of going through an equity audit, but also continuing to look at our practices with diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I really look forward to not only sharing what we're doing and getting feedback, but also what other organizations and schools are doing as well, so we can continue to grow as well. So thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Dr. Wilson.
Yes, good morning. Good morning, everyone. A special shout out to my Glenbard folks out there all over the 9 communities actually that we serve. And I'm here representing our great superintendent, Dr. Larson, as he is on another call. And that's also important in our work. I am Raquel Wilson, and I have been with the district for 9 great years. And I look forward to continuing to lead our equity work, as it is not only the umbrella in which we are under, but it is also the foundation in which we continue to build and grow and get better. And each student, every student deserves all the resources that we have to maintain and accelerate their success. And that means all means all, right? So I appreciate the opportunity today and look forward to learning and growing with you all.
Awesome. And Julia, you feeling ready to jump in here? You're muted. We're just doing quick introductions and talking about why this learning and this work is significant.
Yeah, thank you. I'm really happy to be here this morning representing the Glen Ellyn Park District. I am a board member, and I'm really interested in talking about what we're all offering and how we can work together to make that work. In particular, the Park District is offering wonderful things, but sometimes the logistics, we need help with the logistics to help everyone take part. So that's what we're hoping to achieve in particular. Thank you, and look forward to it.
Thank you so much, Julia. And finally, we will hear from Brian. Take it away.
Thank you, Reesheda, and thank you for facilitating this session for us. A special shout out to the Glen Ellyn Public Library, who took a lead role in coordinating this whole program. I have to clarify that I'm the president of the College of DuPage. The chairman of our board is Christine Fenney, and she is on the line in a great support of our equity program. I've been at the college about 4 years, the president for approximately 2 years, and we've had an interest in equity from the very beginning. So we're just pleased to support this community effort and look forward to what everyone has to say about their equity efforts throughout the community.
Thank you so much for that clarification. All right, well, we have everyone, and thank you all for what you've shared also. There's a question also in the chat for the panel about the Butterfield Park District and whether or not they will be joining the call. They will not be joining the call today as a part of the panel, and that's a conversation that we could definitely take deeper offline. If they should be a part of this journey, we certainly would love to extend the invitation. But for today, we know for certain the Butterfield Park District will not be a part of the panel. Thank you for your question. All right, and so now we will jump into what will essentially be 7 to 10 minutes per panelist, as each one will share what each entity represented on the panel is up to as it pertains to diversity, equity, and inclusion. You can talk about whatever you think is most important for the community to hear as it relates to the work you're doing. Obviously, you're also welcome to be transparent in sharing where the challenges and boundaries might be, where some of the roadblocks are that you might have experienced, as well as what you might continue to be curious about. It's important to note that there's an art and a science to this work, and that the work is forever and ongoing. And so just for the audience's sake, obviously I'm a Black woman, so I have been living out the impact of how our country and our world engages diversity, equity, and inclusion for my entire life. And every night when I go to bed, I still have new questions about how to engage this work, how to move it further, farther, faster, right? And so as we listen, let us try to engage this from a posturing of grace and understanding and compassion, while also recognizing the tension we hold in holding that grace and that compassion for arguably some of the hardest work this country and this world has to do. And also recognizing that as community members, these are our leaders, right? And so also holding that compassion and grace and humility, and how we get curious about the work with an accountability and an expectation, and recognizing the responsibility that our leaders hold in forging us all ahead as it pertains to diversity, equity, and inclusion. I name that as a tandem, as a tension for us to manage as we engage in listening to what our leaders have to share, and that together we can get curious about a way forward that involves us all and calls us all to participate. So we're going to receive our panelists from that place, in that vein. We certainly will have time at the end of our presentations to entertain community questions. So as you listen to the panelists, feel free to write your questions down and hold them to the end, where we will then entertain questions for the entire panel, for you to share what you're curious about as a community with your leaders. And so without further ado, we will start today with Melissa. Melissa, please take it away.
Absolutely. I'm assuming you mean me, Melissa. I know there's two of us.
Yes,
Just want to make sure.
Yes, thank you.
Well, again, good morning, everyone. And again, my name is Melissa Cunningham, and I'm an instructional coach for District 89. And so just to begin with, sorry, I know there's an echo going on, but I'll continue. Thank you. So to begin with, just starting with what we have done. So as a district in the last 2 years, we have started going through the process of an equity audit as an entire district, which looked at collecting and analyzing both quantitative and qualitative data in regards to everything within our district, from practices to systems to structures that we have currently in place. And it looked at lots of different things, from our demographics and discipline data and our assessments and absences and tardies, to our district climate and culture overall, how we're incorporating student voice and family voice, and just our professional learning and growth as teachers and educators within the district as well. And so as part of the audit, they provided numerous recommendations that we are continuing to look at, but also analyzing as a group too. So as part of this equity audit, we also developed an equity leadership team who's made up of our district administrators, so our superintendent, our director of curriculum and instruction, and then principals and teachers. And then intentionally, we try to encompass the diversity of our staff, at least at the present moment, on this group as well too. So this group began working together last fall, and we have worked together to analyze the findings, like I said, of the equity audit, but again, starting to make some of those shifts in our practices. So where we're currently at is we've started to develop our common definitions of what diversity, equity, and inclusion will look like for us, but also what is that common understanding, and then what is that going to actually look like in our behavior and our daily practices. And like you had said, Reesheda, that this work is continual. I think that's an important part of what we've continued to talk about. There's nothing about that this work that's a one and done. So continuing to revisit those definitions, and again, what does that look like in practice? And then lastly, as stated above, the audit has also provided us with some other recommendations that we'll continue to look at too. So developing a long-term plan to increase the diversity among our teachers and administrators is a huge component and something we've started to look at, but again, are in the early phases of that. Developing a long-term and measurable plan to demonstrate our commitment and growth to that equity, and then other recommendations that will continue. So as I said before, one of the pieces of work that we've really started is developing our definitions, but we all agreed as a group that we can't just live in the definition component. We have to move forward from there and really talk about what does that actually look like in our daily work. But we started looking at different resources and articles and definitions to help us develop our own common understanding as that equity group. And then our next steps from there is going to be that we have to share that with our stakeholders, but also facilitate conversation to build those common understandings again of what diversity, equity, and inclusion mean for us, and again, what they look at in practice. What we've been doing though so far is really trying to focus especially on bringing more voices to the table. So one of our teachers at the middle school level, Danielle Bongiorno, who's one of our African-American teacher, has a parent group that she has been working with for the last 2 years and has been trying to make that group reflective of our African-American student population at the middle school. So she meets with them frequently throughout the year, and then like I said, it's been in place for a few years. Uses that group though to provide resources and facilitates conversation, but also more importantly, tries to create that community where they can collaborate and share and voice ideas and concerns. Another group that we've had in place for a couple of years too is our BPAC group, which stands for Bilingual Parent Advisory Committee. And again, they meet with a lot of our diverse families, and the same as Danielle's group, just provides a platform for them to be able to share ideas and concerns, but again, provides a voice to help us reflect upon, and shift our current systems and practices. And then lastly, going along with that voice component too, we have a special education family advisory group. And then our superintendent, Emily Tamaru, also has a parent advisory group that she meets with frequently, that she developed purposely with intention to make sure that our group is representative of all aspects of our community. So in addition to having voice with our families, we've been really focusing also in the last year of how we can bring more student voice into our district as well. That was one of the major recommendations of our equity audit as well. So for the last 2 years, we've had student board members who attend our board meetings and share ideas and give their input. And then each of our principals from elementary to middle school have a student advisory board again, where students can provide feedback, insights, and ideas. And then going along with that, a couple of our teachers have began in this past summer a teacher group that we're calling our anti-racist teacher group, who again is continuing to look at diversity, equity, inclusion. And really the purpose of it is to create that safe space where we can discuss these topics and confront our biases and our practices that are in place and develop those common understandings together. And as we know, most importantly, make shifts in our practice then too, and talk about what does this look like in the classroom? What does this look like at the school level? What does this look like at the district level? And many of the people that attend those meetings are also part of that equity leadership group as well. So lastly, what do we continue to plan to do is continuing to look at the recommendations from our equity audit, specifically really with our area of curriculum and discipline. Like you had said before, just to be frank, continuing to look at our discipline data and really analyzing that and what can we do to make shifts in our practice, and definitely with our curriculum and instruction, of course, as well. And then our hiring process is definitely too. And that is something that our district administrators have already begun the process to look at and looking to make some shifts in that as well. So that's kind of where we're at right now. And between students, families, and teachers, we realize that obviously this work is multifaceted and we can't do one step at a time. So we need to really focus on how can we divide and conquer and really focus on multiple areas at once and continue from there.
Thank you, Melissa. I was also taking notes as you were speaking.
Sure, of course.
As I will be RGW, and maybe I probably should have mentioned this to the community, but we will be also taking all of the listening that we do across this process and compiling an after action report for a comprehensive report for all of the agencies of Glen Ellyn who participate. And so much of what you share is also really helpful to us as we try to develop a composite of impressions around DEI for the entire community. So thank you so much for that.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Melissa. Now we will hear from Dr. Wilson.
Great. Thank you. And I will share my screen just to give a little, keep me on track a little bit there. Should be up now. Okay. All right. So in my role in the district is always, I think any role in the district is multifaceted, right? And we always have had the opportunity to really look at all of our students and really have an opportunity to pair with each building, each of our 4 high schools, and look at our data to ensure that we were on the right track and serving each student for what they needed. So our equity journey began officially in 2008 with a great partnership with over 70 community members, maybe some of you that are on this call today, that really kind of started our opportunity to look at what key areas really make the most sense. That also coincided with, at that time, No Child Left Behind, and where were we in regards to meeting those different metrics. And so we identified key areas to look at specific groups of students, to look at how our Black students were faring, how our Latinx students were faring, what did it look like in the comparison. And at that time, that's when that term achievement gap was so prevalent, right? And we have evolved from achievement gap to, opportunity gap, and also consistently and saying at the same time, eliminating all gaps, because that's on us. So we have to do that. So we've continued on this journey and looking at some survey data from our teachers, from licensed staff to our support staff, and some of the racial disparities that were highlighted led to our opportunity to partner with the Equal Opportunity Schools in regards to what students were being selected or what students were being left out of the advanced placement process. And if you are familiar with advanced placement, you know that that is an opportunity for students to level up, to earn college credits while they're in high school. It's really an opportunity to show students what they can do, and an opportunity for us to continue to highlight and grow students, right? That's the business that we're in, growing our over 8,000 students in Glenbard, 52% of which are students of color. And so we know in our journey as we continue to move forward that what our classrooms may have used to look like, what maybe the community may have been used to, again, this is an opportunity where we have to look at not only society, our country, and say, what are we doing for each and every student, not just the students who possibly come in with, they may, traditionally, the student may have done this, right? Because if we're predicting the academic disparities, that is not equity. And so we absolutely have to be intentional about what we're doing. So again, many of you may have been involved in our strategic planning through the profile of a graduate process that we engaged in 2018, a little bit in 2019, or into 2019, and really to operationalize 6 core strategies that would help guide not only what we wanted our graduates to have, but that would also be the undergirding as helping us move forward. It was very easy to come up with the 4, communicates, collaborates, thinks critically, creates. We also have it, our graduates will be self-empowered. Yes, those kind of seem like it fits. But if you were at that meeting where we were kind of going back and forth about what that last component would be, and it was embraces diversity is where we landed. And that embracing diversity component has really been, I believe it was an eye opener. It was very affirming to me as a Black woman in a large organization. And I really felt like the conversation, I believe, became normalized around diversity, equity, belonging, and not being initiatives or being these, these one-offs, but it really became a part of how we see us doing things day to day. And so we, shortly after that, we began a partnership with the Pacific Education Group and started having staff trainings in regards to courageous conversations around race. We started with race because that is the one thing when you walk into a door, that is what you see. And then that allows us to, once we're comfortable with those conversations, and as we're having them at the same time, we're also looking at what are those other pieces that intersect with our students. What, right? What's, the ability, how they identify from a gender standpoint, and all of those pieces that intersect with our students are super, super important. So with this, our current and future work, we look at these 5 areas to help guide and help streamline what we are, the areas that we really focus on. We take the opportunity to, as we're currently looking at these areas to guide our work and to make it so that it is streamlined, and it also helps us know where we're going, and right, because it's multi-year work, it is very much a process, and that while these are numbered, this is not necessarily, well, first we're going to do this, second we'll do this. They're just numbered right there to kind of give those 5 areas that have a lot of breadth and depth underneath them. So one of the things that we were able to get accomplished right before we went out for COVID, and it truly was a silver lining, we had the opportunity to meet with our student groups at all 4 high schools in affinity groups. So when I say affinity groups, that means they were the same racially, but then had other intersects, whether ability, athletes, non-athletes in fine arts, band, on the LGBTQ spectrum, LGBTQIA spectrum. And so we really had an opportunity through some particular questionings to get into what does a student need to belong when they step foot on our campus day one, because that belonging piece, and while it's sometimes hard to quantify, it certainly shows up in other areas if students don't feel like they belong that first day. And so that has led us to, and the reason I have student voice, climate, and culture highlighted, because this has been a specific area that we've been able to focus on during the pandemic, knowing that we will continue to focus on that, but we've really been able to bolster some opportunities for our students at each of the high schools, right? And this is, right, a reminder of our why. When you think about students, you think about growing that next group of students, and we think about the fantastic poet laureate, the youngest poet laureate at the inauguration this past week, but all of her work, right? It's just a great reminder to me, and I think collectively, about why we're doing what we're doing. And so I leave you with that, and I look forward to questions on the other end.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wilson. And I think in the spirit of cohesion, we should hear from Dr. K next, as we keep all of our education information tight and closely knit. Let's hear from you, Dr. K. Thank you so much.
Okay, I'm going to try not to repeat some of the work that's been done. I think there's a great deal of crossover between the school districts, a lot of commonality of things that have happened. So I'm going to try to focus on some things that are maybe a little bit unique to us where we're at right now. So a few years back, District 41 commissioned an equity audit. And as a result of that audit, there was work done through our Department of Teaching and Learning and Student Services to start really looking at instructional materials, assessment practices and tools, and really start to put a focus on removing barriers and bias from what we do, what we put in our schools, how we assess kids, and how do we allow all kids to be successful. With where this has gone now, as I mentioned it the last time, the board has charged our strategic plan work and committee that really represents a great cross-section of the community and stakeholders, and includes students, both past and present, and student board members. We too have student voice on our Board of Education. So it's a great cross-section of our key stakeholders. We did put the work on pause. It was impacted by COVID. And so I guess one of the bright spots in that is that while we have had to put that work on pause because you just can't get those stakeholders together, our leadership team in the district is undergoing a university micro-credential process to become fully micro-credentialed in DEI. It was extremely important to us as a leadership team that those who represent every aspect of work and people in the district are able to have a common understanding and a common vocabulary so that we can implement the charge of the district, which was to develop a strategic plan that really anchors to the value of DEI. So we're in the process of doing that work right now and going through that program to learn together just as a leadership team. So it's been, great work so far, and it will continue. Where we see this going is when we are able to start our strategic plan work with all of our stakeholders. As a leadership team, we will have some drafts of products such as an equity statement that we can put in front of the group as a starting point. So not that it's the end point, but it is a draft that really does represent all of the key work and departments and employee groups, to move that work forward from. So, that is really what our focus is right now. We look forward to picking up that work. I think for our board, this has been a big commitment. Sometimes I think the frustration is you need to do that foundational work first so that you can move forward. When everybody isn't on the same page with their understandings and their vocabularies, you know, it's important to do that because I believe our work will accelerate then when, as leaders, we come to the table with these shared understandings and vocabulary, and our ability to implement the charge of the board will be extremely heightened and better and different than all of us bringing something different to the table, different experiences. So in terms of work that's happening differently by us, you know, we're doing a lot of the same things that the other districts have shared, but really did take a little bit of a step back to build that capacity within our leadership team.
Thank you so much, Dr. K. I appreciate what you've shared. And we've heard from elementary and high school districts. So let's go ahead and matriculate and hear from Brian at the College of DuPage.
Thank you, Reesheda. I'm going to try to share my screen as well. And we'll get this. Okay. There we go. Hope you can see that. See the screen. Very pleased to be able to talk about the equity work of the College of DuPage. This journey started really at the beginning of 2019. We started thinking about what an equity plan might look like. In about September, as I'll explain, that same year we got our first draft of a plan together. Equity is a very serious consideration at College of DuPage, and in fact, our Board of Trustees has added equity as an explicit value of the institution. And then what we did, we developed a new strategic plan, strategic long-range plan as we call it. Equity is embedded in each one of the 4 pillars that we have at the institution. That is student success, arts and culture, economic development, and organizational development. And it's a little bit beyond the scope of this presentation, but you probably can imagine how equity really can fit in each one of those areas. Most of what I'm going to talk about here has to do with the student success piece. So how we really got a lot of momentum in our equity program is we joined the Illinois Equity and Attainment Initiative. Illinois is not doing really well in its equity work as a whole. Generally speaking, we rank 46th in the nation, that is Illinois, with 50th being last place. We're 46th in terms of the graduation gap between Black and white students. And what the Illinois Equity and Attainment Initiative does is it's a companion program to, excuse me, companion program to the P20 initiative. P20 is a group of K-12 and higher ed institutions that are trying to raise the number of Illinoisans who have some form of high quality credential by the year 2025. So this would be such things as certificates that are useful in the marketplace. And I will add that COD offers 170 different certificate programs, associate degrees, bachelor's degrees, or higher. Right now, over the course of 15 years or so, Illinois has made progress. And right now we're about at 51% of the state's population has that working population, has that sort of credential. But certainly more can be done. And what this Illinois Equity and Attainment Initiative does is it is a companion to try to close some of the achievement gaps between students of color and under-resourced students, and try to get more of them across the finish line in terms of education. When we talk about these under-resourced students in higher ed world, that's Pell eligible. Those are the students that don't have some of the resources that others do. And it also focuses on Black and Latinx students on our campuses. So what is ALEA really all about? It focuses on achievement gaps, and it's the signature initiative. ALEA, Illinois Equity and Attainment, is the signature initiative of the Partnership for College Completion, which is a not-for-profit organization in a group of about 28 different colleges that are trying to close the gap between whites and students of color and under-resourced students. So we joined this initiative in 2019 and was very helpful to us in terms of structuring our program. And it aligns very well with our Pathways program within the institution. Pathways for us is a global program, multi-faceted, that is trying to get students where they want to go. That is, what school do they want to go to next? What kind of degree do they want to get? Where do they want to go in terms of their job objective? And we try to structure programs to get them there with all the supports, the counseling, the onboarding. It's a very multi-faceted, and equity is a component of that overall program. We do have a leadership team, which is comprised of our senior administrators and other key individuals, but also within our committee structure for Pathways, we have an equity and access team that focus specifically on trying to help us implement our equity plan. I should mention, we've got a lot of talented people on that equity and access team, to include its chair, Jill Salas, one of our English professors. So we're quite proud of the work that that group is doing. We like to show this slide to try to help individuals understand what equity really means. So some might think that equity is equality, that is giving everyone the same opportunities to get where they want to go. Well, that's good, but it's really not enough to help students who have kind of started out behind. So when you look at the right half of the slide, you see in that stack a number of things that certain students have a bit of an advantage, whether they've had scholarships or their parents have been educated, so they kind of know how education works and can coach their kids along. SAT, ACT tutors. Research shows you take those classes, you study hard, you're going to do well on the ACT or SAT. Or socioeconomically, are you in the middle to upper class? Have you had the ability to take such classes as one of my colleagues has mentioned earlier, honors classes, AP classes? Who's got the best teachers? All of these things contribute. So if you've had those sorts of advantages, great. But if you haven't had those sorts of advantages, what our equity plan is trying to do is to help out and try to make up some of those differences, to give, on average, some of our Black students, Latinx students, and under-resourced students a bit of a jump start. So what are we really talking about here? What we're talking about in terms of equity in this plan, primarily on graduation, but there are other elements of our larger plan in terms of persistence from term to term. We don't want students to drop out. We want to make sure they've got the financial support to the best of our ability, that they can keep moving forward and transferring on to the next institution. Here, what we're talking about is making sure those differences, and I'll talk about the differences in a minute, between students of color, under-resourced students, and white students are closed. Those gaps are closed. And this really, and we're trying to do it by 2025. This is really a dedicated effort. I talked about our committee that is set up. It's really one of the largest, if not the largest, committees in our organization all across the institution, trying to think about what do we need to do to move our students forward. And we're really trying to develop something that has annual performance targets, and you'll get a flavor for that in a minute. And we want to make sure that there's enough capacity behind this program to really make a difference. This will give you some ideas as far as the gaps that we're looking at. We have about 21,000 students of College of DuPage, 7% Black, 25% Latinx, 50% white, and 42% are Pell recipients. Now you drop down and you see some of the graduation rates. See that white graduation rate of 29%. Now that's just graduation. We have other students that come through and they don't necessarily complete an associate's degree, but they get the coursework done that they need, and then they transfer, say, after a year to a four-year institution. So that's another measure of success. Right here, we're focusing on just graduation. Then you look at Black and Latinx and those gaps, the gaps shown in red there. They are lagging on average. Of course, not every student of color or under-resourced student is caught up in the gap, but on average, there are gaps. And then you look at the Pell recipients, compared to the non-Pell recipients. There's a gap there too. So when we talk about equity, we want to close those gaps. And this is going to take some time. We've got a target to try to get there. But if we're not moving, what we're going to do is this plan is going to adapt. One of my other colleagues talked about it being a continuing program. Yes, it is a continuing program. And we've got some literature that tells us what works in higher ed, but we're going to be doing our own research and say, okay, if we're not getting enough traction, what do we need to change to get that traction? So some of the things that we have achieved or learned about the equity initiative, it really requires college-wide buy-in. And let's be clear about this, not everyone understands this. So part of it's an education process, and some of the engagements that our faculty and staff may need to change a bit in order to maximize the impact. We are looking at data. We're trying to do surveys of how our students perform in a number of different ways, what leads to success. We call that predictive analytics, at least in part. Constantly looking at what works. The stats that I showed you a minute ago, that was a 2016 cohort, as we call it, and how they did after 3 years. That's essentially a standard metric in our field. 150% of the lowest time, or the most common amount of time to graduate. 150%. How well did they make it? Well, how quickly did they make it? We're going to keep looking at that and making sure each cohort gets better. We are engaging students. They tell us what happens in the classroom. They may not tell their instructor, but they may say something through a survey. So we're doing some surveying. Cross-constituency involvement, that committee that I told you about, equity and access, we've got administrators, faculty members, staff members from all different functional areas involved to try to understand and engage this problem. And it's going to be a continuing process of education through readings. We have books that we circulate amongst the institution to help people understand, and we have training also to go along with that. Some specific things that we want to do so far, and this again is going to adapt over time. Within 2 years, what we're trying to do is by fall of 22 is to increase Black student success from 47% to 51%. Now, when we talk about student success here, again, those numbers look a little different than the earlier slide, because overall student success is not just graduation. Some of our students transfer out. Some of our students just simply persist. If they're persisting and not dropping out, that is a measure of success. Within 2 years, by the fall of 2022, the Latinx students increasing their student success from 61% to 65%. And then some of the strategies that we would employ, just the first salvo, if you will, these will adapt and change. Professional development. So our faculty know what are some of the best techniques to try to reach students of color and under-resourced students, as well as staff. Staff engagement matters too. So they need to be trained in this as well. We're looking to establish a place on campus for multicultural programming and gathering, a space where it's particularly focused on trying to understand the issue of equity and engage the issue and move us forward. And also looking at our hiring practices and our recruitment. Sometimes, to get educators, people of color, so you have some percentages that roughly are equivalent to what the student population is, you got to work hard sometimes. It's not a passive process. It may not be just posting a job advertisement in a particular newsletter. You may need to get out and go to the places where they're at and do active recruiting. So our equity sub-teams, I told you about that equity and access team that we've got. We've got 4 separate sub-teams that are looking at each one of those strategies I mentioned, plus we added another. This shows the evolution of the equity program, and this is all within our overall pathway structure. It's here to benefit all students, but this effort is specifically for students of color and those who are under-resourced. So again, we have a recruitment and hiring team. We've got a team that is specifically looking at what might a space look like to serve students of color and those who are under-resourced. We also have a group that is developing thoughts about training. How can we have the most effective training? And also this added group on it doesn't have a specific strategy, but we've come to recognize that financial literacy is a piece. Getting through college and all of the finance implications of it is not always easy, and it's not always apparent to everyone. So there's an education process. We want to engage our students when they start to get in trouble, catch them, help them. Okay, what's the problem here? Let's see if we can work through this. Were you aware of this scholarship? Were you aware of this program? You need not leave the institution. Keep going with your education. That's what this group really is looking at. And just in closing, within our equity plan, which is the undergirding of our equity program, we do have the statement that is a bit of our institutional philosophy about equity. I just draw your attention to particularly the second piece. College of DuPage believes in the right to a high quality education in an equitable and inclusive environment. And then the next paragraph, through intentional design. In other words, we need to take structural sorts of steps to be able to move the needle. We recognize that, and we're committed to doing that. So with that, I will close and pass it on to my ex-colleague, and I too look forward to any questions that you may have at the end of the presentations.
Thank you so much, Brian, for what you've shared. I just want to remind the listeners that we will circle back to questions for sure, promise, at the end. And now we are going to hear from Julia from Glen Ellyn Park District. Julia, take it away.
You gotta unmute yourself, Julia.
Thank you. I'd like to express my appreciation to the Glen Ellyn Library and the Village of Glen Ellyn for initiating this process. And a special thanks to Reesheda Graham Washington from RGW Consulting and your talented team for serving as consultants and moderators. I'm honored to be part of the discussion and look forward to learning from our constituents and striving to improve so the Park District and the community can better serve all its members. I've been a board member of the Glen Ellyn Park District since 2009, and I have been watching a lot of the evolution of these kinds of issues. The Park District was established in 1919, and our mission is to foster diverse, community-based leisure opportunities through a harmonious blend of quality recreation programs, facilities, and open space, which will enhance the quality of life into the future. The Park District's goal is to ensure community members feel welcomed in facilities and programs and have access to quality programs and opportunities that enable them to play, learn, recreate, explore, and grow no matter their background or financial status. For one to benefit from the many services, programs, events, and activities that the Park District offers, one must be able to be informed, to be able to access them, and be able to participate. So it might seem simple to inform people, but educating the public about what we offer is a really ongoing, particularly regarding the dissemination of information and community awareness. This can be particularly difficult for those residents that are most vulnerable and in most need. So to do so, many resources and opportunities are utilized, including the website, the Park District website, extensive Park District email list, promotional materials, mailers, social media outlets, community outreach, and collaboration with the school districts, 41, 89, 87, and local service organizations like the Glen Ellyn Children's Resource Center and the Central DuPage Kiwanis Club. Even with these many available resources, it is still a challenge to connect with those potential residents in need. Regarding other efforts to provide access and inclusion, our longstanding partnership with the Western DuPage Special Recreation Association, also called WDSRA, has created integrated opportunities for those participants with special needs for nearly all Park District programs. This collaboration enables the special needs community to attend and participate in activities while receiving inclusion services and support at no charge. The assistance and support vary depending on the needs of the individual and can range from adapted materials and equipment to providing support staff to offering specific programming and services for the special needs community. For the active adult population, several services and programs are offered, such as income tax assistance in partnership with the AARP and rules of the road classes with the Illinois Secretary of State, as well as a variety of low-cost recreation, socialization, and enrichment opportunities. Some of these are senior lunches, fitness classes, day trips, senior-only lap swim at the pool, and cards and bingo. Our facilities, which include the Ackerman Sports and Fitness Center, Sunset Pool, which is just a summer pool, outdoor pool, Village Green Garden Plots, and Holes and Knolls Mini Golf, offer reduced rates for seniors to encourage participation in wellness, recreation, and socialization. Both our fitness centers accept silver sneakers and other insurance-based memberships. The addition of outdoor pickleball courts with indoor play has been very popular with the seniors as well. As mentioned previously, the Park District is committed to equitable access to programs, recognizing that some residents are unable to take part due to financial hardships. We have a financial assistance scholarship program. This program helps economically challenged residents of all ages by providing full to partial funding for programs, events, and athletics. Eligible households receive up to $400 per person per year, which enables them the opportunity to engage in programs through the district. In 2019, the scholarship program benefited 177 local families. We also give out hundreds of pool and Ackerman Sports and Fitness Center memberships annually. Moving forward, the district is looking to improve the financial assistance program through fundraising, which would expand the funds and increase awareness. We would also be interested in translating application materials into Spanish, work more closely with key personnel at the school districts. In addition to the scholarship program, a program is in place that extends the resident rate to students who attend Churchill School but do not reside within the Glen Ellyn Park District boundaries. A special scholarship fund is available for Glen Ellyn Children's Resource Center participants, and it provides financial aid to participate in our recreational and travel soccer programs and other Park District activities. The soccer participants are also provided transportation and equipment if they need it. So transportation to be able to participate is particularly important in these areas and still needs to be addressed. The Park District welcomes more partnerships that could increase awareness of the financial assistance programs and help with the transportation. And so we hope that this DEI project will lead to more partnerships. Each year, the district also provides an ever-growing variety of complimentary events and programs open to everyone with no charge. These free offerings range from events like Family Fun Night, July 4th, afternoon festivities, and other smaller programs, nature walks, story times, and we do that with the Glen Ellyn Public Library and Park. Children, youth, and adults and of all ages need safe and equal access to quality parks to exercise in. We have 365 days a year, 29 parks open, over 4 miles of trail, and more than 263 acres of open space. In addition to playgrounds, we also offer other amenities, skate parks, basketball courts, athletic fields, fishing pier, etc. The Park District strives to make its facilities accessible to and usable by all patrons and visitors by meeting or exceeding ADA minimum standards. So we'll be renovating, for example, Newton Park in 2021 with an emphasis of inclusivity, including a sensory garden and other accessibility. The district also impacts local families and supports our most vulnerable communities with its relationships with other local organizations. During the pandemic in 2020, the Park District staged many service-oriented events and will continue to do so in 2021. To date, we've collected over 1,200 bags of food and toiletry donations for the Glen Ellyn Food Pantry. And we will be hosting food drives every month in 2021. We hosted our first drive for Toys for Tots, gathering more than 500 toys for children in the county. And we've had the DuPage County Shop with a Cop. In a typical year, the district assists with coat drives, Halloween costume drives, and more. And the blood drive has been particularly successful, and we will continue having that monthly through 2021. As a park district, we recognize and understand that diversity in the community brings great richness to the quality of life in Glen Ellyn. The park district works to assure that the diversity of our residents is considered when developing our programs. And so, for example, in the Glen Ellyn Summer Dance, the Frida Kahlo Paint and Sip, and combined WDSRA and Lakers Travel Soccer Day of Play events. And we'd like to do more of those, and we just like to have more partnerships and more knowledge of how we can do that. The community demographics are also represented within our marketing materials, in images, showing all different variety of races, ages, and genders. And we're starting to change names and descriptions of our programs to be more inclusive. So, for example, parent-child rather than father-daughter. And through it all, the Glen Ellyn Park District recognized that there are still many ways we can improve and expand in this areas of diversity, equity, and inclusion. We hope to establish a committee to further evaluate, and it was interesting to see all these different organizations that have equity committees. We have several similar committees for things like environmental and athletics and finance, and that's been very helpful to us. We can create more diverse and cultural programs. We would like to create more and offer translations, more bilingual staff, for example. This process and engagement with other local agencies, community organizations, and residents will be an excellent opportunity to learn more and assist both the Park District and the community in moving forward on improving and addressing diversity, equity, and inclusion within Glen Ellyn. Thank you, Reesheda and Don, and everyone else taking part, and especially thank you to our community.
Thank you so much, Julia. Give me just 1 second. I'm finalizing a note here. All right. Thank you all for your patience. And thank you, Julia, for your comprehensive presentation. We are getting down to it. Let's hear from Andre, Treasurer on the Board of Trustees for Glen Ellyn Public Library.
Thanks, Reesheda. I'm really happy to share that a lot of the diversity, equity, and inclusion work that the library has underway has actually started a number of years ago. So starting in 2017, the Glen Ellyn Public Library reformulated the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee so that staff across multiple departments could complete an accessibility project for our members who were differently able. In the summer of 2020, as a response to the senseless murders of both George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, the committee, they decided to expand its scope so that all diverse identities and voices could be heard. The committee's first task that it took on was to complete the Wisconsin Department of Public Institutions Inclusive Services Assessment. Currently, the state of Illinois doesn't offer one, so a decision was made to utilize the Wisconsin Department of Public Institutions assessment. This assessment, it's comprised of essentially a holistic self-reflection checklist with an aim of uncovering how welcoming, accessible, equitable the library was to members and staff. The assessment categories, they range from administration, services, outdoor space, restrooms, staff areas, technology, community engagement, as well as self-care for staff. The assessment then ranked the responses given and provided tangible examples of how to improve our building's inclusivity. It served as a benchmark to know that we were making forward progress. Based on the results of that completed assessment, I wanted to share some of the completed actions that were taken. First, we made one of the outside picnic tables wheelchair accessible. Second, we have started an author audit of adult materials where we are seeking for diversity in our authors. We have started a diversity audit of youth picture books and are continuing this audit into other collections. We have purchased some books in Braille, which is a system of touch reading and writing for blind persons in which raised dots represent the letters of the alphabet. We have added a diversity statement to our employment opportunities page of the Glen Ellyn Public Library website. We had the DEI committee share suggested books, movies, blogs, and podcasts to the rest of the staff during the in-service. This was also shared with the Board of Trustees. Recognizing the need to provide library card assistance to families and individuals with demonstrable economic hardship living in unincorporated areas of the Glen Ellyn area, the Glen Ellyn Public Library created what's called the Open Books, Open Doors program, starting in 2002. The Open Books, Open Doors is for low-income families who live in unincorporated Glen Ellyn or in unincorporated towns other than Glen Ellyn who have a student attending school in District 41, District 89, or High School District 87. These individuals will be issued a library card and be able to take advantage of the vast library resources that are offered. As part of the Zoom meetings, we have also adopted the closed caption feature, which enhances accessibility for those who have hearing impairments. We have activated our subscription and provided all staff with access to the Homelessness Training Academy. One of my personal favorites, we have launched our Let's Talk Race kits, which are available now for checkout. These are kits that are included. They have curated materials, books, conversation guides, tips, and outside resources with the goal of initiating relevant and educational family discussions. We have also added the use of pronouns in staff email signatures. Last but not least, and following a trend that many other libraries across the nation have been following, is that we have eliminated late fees on return materials, which based on our knowledge has a tendency to disproportionately affect those representing lower economic status. Moving on to what the library is currently doing, I would like to share with you some exciting initiatives that are currently underway. First, we are working on a staff lunch and learn program that is scheduled to be held on February 24th on the subject of unconscious bias. We are also currently working on a land acknowledgement statement recognizing the Native American Indians who inhabited the land in Glen Ellyn before us. We are investigating opportunities for additional grant funding, which will help support our continued diversity, equity, and inclusion programming. As some of you may know, for several summers now, the Glen Ellyn Public Library has participated in Summer Food Service Program, which is supported by the Northern Illinois Food Bank. Through this partnership, the Glen Ellyn Public Library has been able to provide nutritious meals for children in the community at no cost to the library or to the children joining us. This service is available to all children 18 and under on a first-come, first-served basis. Along with their lunches, families can also receive snack packs for their children. To help provide these snacks, the library relies on the continued partnership of several organizations, including the Kiwanis Club of Glen Ellyn, Glen Ellyn Cares, and the Glen Ellyn Food Pantry. Looking ahead in terms of the future, the last part of the presentation, some of the initiatives relate to the programming that the library is offering, will offer, and continued support for our diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. It is the policy of the Glen Ellyn Public Library to develop and maintain a superior collection of materials. As part of the library's continued support of our DEI initiatives, we will be updating our collection policy to ensure that the language is reflective of our community input. The library also plans to create a social media campaign to recognize why the library avoids hosting programming on specific days and to reflect more holidays that our community as a whole celebrates. The library will be holding a staff and board winter reading challenge, which I understand is now underway. In terms of programming, on February 5th, from 10:30 a.m. to 11, the Glen Ellyn Public Library will host a virtual program titled Diverse Voices Storytime. This is an interactive story time for ages 3 and up that celebrates Black boy joy and Black girl magic. Taking place on March 23rd from 6:30 p.m. to 8 p.m., there will be a Native American Advocacy Roundtable where we will learn about the strong Native American presence in our community's past, present, and future, as well as how to actively continue to support Native peoples. In addition to this roundtable, there is another one which will focus more so on social justice. In April of this year, the library will be offering a virtual art program where participants can learn to paint like Frida Kahlo. Research shows that youth service library staff in both public and school libraries recognize the need for professional and personal knowledge related to race and racism. Staff in our youth department will participate in what's called Project Ready, which is an online curriculum site that hosts a series of free online professional development modules for public youth services librarians, for those who are seeking to expand their knowledge about race, racism, and race equity. The library plans to also host a fall signature program that will be based on the feedback received from the community during the DEI project. Finally, the board will continue to work closely and in tandem with the library director and staff to see that as part of the strategic plans, diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives will be given a priority. So although there are always opportunities for improvements, I hope the information that I shared with you today makes you feel as proud as I am that our amazing library continues to be on the forefront of making sure that everyone, regardless of our differences, will always have a seat at the table. And Reesheda, I'll close in a question that you had mentioned or you had posed. You mentioned what are some of the challenges and boundaries that may be presented to us. I think one of the challenge in particular that may also apply to all the other panelists is that how do we continue to push the conversation forward in light of resistance? How do we demonstrate the value of diversity, equity, and inclusion and show that? And one of my suggestions is what I challenge everyone is to continue to expand your networks, continue to expand your social circles, have honest, direct conversations without attacking each other. You know, we're living in a time where we're essentially speaking in echo chambers. We have to stop that. We have to be able to communicate on a very civil level and respect our differences and respect just where we're grounded in terms of our differences. So thank you. And that's everything that I wanted to share.
Thank you so much, Andre. I appreciate what you've shared and the honest, with which you shared it, particularly at the end. This is not just, I mean, it's different from the data work and the budget work and, you know, the finance and operations work that we do. This is undeniably also heart work. And I think it will be important for us to continue to hold that and to uplift that. So thank you. Thank you for that acknowledgement. And last but not least, we will hear from Mark Franz, who is village manager for Glen Ellyn. Take it away, Mark.
The mute button. It's always hard to find the mute button. Andre, really appreciate your comments, and I think I completely agree with that challenge. In addition to just keeping folks engaged in the conversation, it's going to be a challenge too. That's something that came up at our last meeting. So I think that's something that we're all going to have to work together on, and hopefully continue that journey together. So I appreciate your comments. The village has embarked on this kind of journey over the last couple of years, and I won't go through all these slides necessarily. I understand we want to save time for the conversation to kind of begin, but we're excited about this. We're going to identify all of these, the diversity, equity, inclusion piece, and really creates a safe space for these ongoing conversations. So I think that's critical. We are hoping that we get some clear goals and action steps, measurable action steps that we can incorporate into our long-term strategic plan, our 2020 to 2022 strategic plan. And again, I think we've all touched on this, but doing this as a group, I think is much more powerful than doing this individually in separate organizations. So just having this ongoing conversation together, I think is really a great step forward. We want to identify our demographics as a community and understand kind of where we sit today. Now we've got a census data that's going to be coming out here soon, and that could change our demographics, obviously. From an external practice standpoint, I touched on the strategic plan and our mission statement. And I think it's important that we tie this into our values. We've recently reviewed those and respect, accountability, leadership, principles of service, diversity, equality, inclusivity, and trust. And we, in 2019, the village board passed a resolution reaffirming its support for a community free of racism, hatred, and bigotry in all forms. And again, that was solidified with our revised value statement. Goals where we want to identify how we're doing in terms of hiring a high quality, diverse workforce. We want to also create a diverse group of volunteers. We have about 80 volunteers from the community sitting on 11 different boards and commissions. So we think we can be more diverse and better represented in those positions. So a plug that this is the time of year we are asking for volunteers. So if anyone's interested, please go to our website and sign up. There's all kinds of opportunities to help serve the community and help guide the village board on critical policy and discussions. So we've started kind of an informal audit process and have identified kind of these 6 areas that the village is going to monitor and track in terms of a diversity, equity, inclusion. So I'll just go through these relatively quickly, but the first is communications. A key step for us was updating our website in compliance with the accessibility standards. And it also offers a Google Translate feature that translates into 100 different languages. So we do more and more things on our website, especially during the pandemic. We were forced to go in that direction more quickly. So having a website that is accessible to more people was critical, and we're excited about that change over the last year. Communication channels, we continue to try to find the best ways to keep our public informed. Many communities have gotten away from the printed newsletter that goes out quarterly. We have not. We continue to see a very a population that appreciates that, and I think it's a great way to get our information in front of everybody on a regular basis. We have a radio station, 1620 AM. I don't have a radio show. I'm not a disc jockey, but we do try to get critical emergency information on that station. We used it for the pandemic, and it's just a unique way to get information to those that might not have access to the internet during an emergency. We use water bills, social media, a number of different ways to, again, try to get information to as many of our residents as possible. Senior outreach, we have 2 employees that focus on our senior population. I think there's opportunities. Julia mentioned the Park District programs. I think there's ways to partner with the Park District and maybe the Township to do even more with the senior outreach. But we've been focusing, at least over the last year, on getting information to them. This pandemic has been especially difficult on our seniors and lack of access, and so we've been reaching out to them more regularly and really focus on medical assistance in terms of them filing important paperwork to get coverage, as well as some transportation needs. So those are the 2 areas we focus on the most. And youth services, this is another area where I think we can probably expand and partner with the schools and Park District to do a little more for the youth. But we do have a process where they can serve on our boards and commissions and get a little taste of what being a volunteer and an elected official feels like. So we've incorporated them into that process for many years. They also had a separate section of our streetscape project. We're in the process of designing a complete revamp of our downtown, and we had a separate group, a survey for youth, because they're some of our best customers, and I think there's opportunities to do that more, to engage with the youth. If it's what's the grade schools are the learning initiative, where we pose questions and the youth help us come up with some answers. And I think the PBLs, I think there's an opportunity to continue that process. Criminal justice is a critical component of this as well. The police department is a very customer-focused department, always has been. They've got a clear statement of purpose, clear statements of values that have been in place for some time, that have always focused on respect and without prejudice, serving the community, and that certainly will continue. Public engagement is important as well. We've got a volunteer fire and police commission made up of 3 volunteers that handle all the entry-level recruitment and promotions in the department. We do daily foot patrols and customer service focused programs. We've got a DARE officer in the grade schools. We got a school liaison officer in Glenbard West. There's some senior programs that the police department are very involved with. The police chief and others from the department have a once a month coffee with the cops when we're meeting face to face. That will start up once we get back to normal. There's ride-along opportunities, a police academy, and a very strong support for non-for-profits in a variety of different ways, and I'll touch on one in a minute. Training and policies, that's something we're required to do in many cases, but we go above and beyond, and that's just a list of some of the training requirements in the police department. Community development, economic development, we have obviously a robust business community, and we are in the process of updating our long-term comprehensive plan. Last time it was updated was 2001, so that will guide future development in many ways. We have just started a conversation on affordable housing, and we'll be looking at putting a task force together to help drive further conversations and identify some goals to also incorporate in our strategic plan. The state requires 10% affordable housing for each community in Illinois. We exceed that. We're about 16%, but that's only one aspect of looking at a diverse housing stock. We want to reevaluate some goals and again try to incorporate that into our strategic planning. We also provide ombudsman services to ensure that new businesses, growing businesses have, if we can eliminate barriers to their success, we want to partner with the Chamber, the Alliance, Choose DuPage, Innovation DuPage, the Business Development Center. The College of DuPage has been a leader in so many ways. We've had a great partnership with them on that. The Glen Ellyn Library offers so many unique services to the businesses. So partnering with all of our business support functions, I think, is an important aspect of this, and we want all businesses to have the ability to succeed. Health and environment, again, engaging with the youth in the community. We've recently started a mental health teen suicide prevention work group. There was a program Thursday night on train safety, for example. But there's some opportunities there to strengthen that partnership, and the village board approved some additional funding to the Glen Ellyn Youth and Family Services to help with what we all know is going to be a growing mental health demand given this pandemic and all the potential long-lasting impacts that's had on our youth. And again, I mentioned the DARE and School Liaison Officer. Those are police positions that are working with the schools every day. So I think that's a critical component. Strengthening partnership with non-for-profits. Our religious leaders are great ambassadors for the community and are leading in a lot of these equity, diversity, equity, inclusion initiatives. So we've started to partner more with them. We try to, I don't know if it's a monthly meeting, every other month, the religious leaders get together and we're a part of those meetings, and it's a great way to learn from them and also keep them informed on our initiatives. So I think they're a piece of this puzzle as well. We have embarked on a community grant program for next year. We used to do some of this funding for non-for-profits a few years back, and then we went away from it. And now the board has pledged some funds to help our non-for-profits. They're struggling as well, and their missions are so critical to the community that we'll be funding a grant program and offering some financial assistance to those agencies this year and probably for the foreseeable future. Human resources, we certainly want to kind of reevaluate where we are in some of our training initiatives. We want to take whatever goals we are established from this process and put them into our recruitment process, our training process, and our employee retention process. So we're excited to be able to kind of assess where we are and get some more measurable goals in the human resources area. Infrastructure, I mentioned the streetscape project for the downtown. We're really excited about that. That is it's long overdue. We haven't really invested in the downtown infrastructure in some time, and we know we have some barriers to accessibility, and we've got to replace all of our sidewalks. We're going to be adding some 17 more handicap parking spaces in the downtown. We're building a parking garage that's going to have a number of handicap parking spaces on the first level there. So I think it's just an opportunity for us to not only invest in the downtown, but meet some necessary ADA accessibility improvements and just improve the pedestrian feel for the downtown at the same time. We've done that a little bit over the last 5 or 6 years with our new facilities, new police station, renovated civic center, the Village Links clubhouse, all have been renovated, and we've certainly made some ADA improvements that were long in coming. And then more on a transportation level, we're hoping to partner with COD. One of our comprehensive plan goals is to create better connectivity between the train station and our downtown and COD. That's something that we're going to continue to strive for. A new train station we hope is going to come on board here in the next 5 years. And the train station has some ADA deficiencies that we want to address. And then just bike plan and incorporating bike lanes and racks and amenities just to identify alternative transportation methods for our community is a component of this as well. Future areas of improvement, I think there's a host of things that could be on the table, but things that our team has identified early on are, and I mentioned this earlier, bringing more people to the table, more public engagement. And this is a great place to start, but we have more work to do. evaluating our senior services and coordinating it with other organizations. I think there's opportunities there. Evaluating service delivery to non-English speaking residents. We know that population is growing and we've got to grow with that. So, sorry, I have a little typo here. Our overall recruitment assessment is something we have just started to review, and again, hoping to get some tangible goals and action steps from this process. And then training is something we think we can partner with our Glen Ellyn Volunteer Fire Company and Police Department and do some ongoing training. The police department's required to do implicit bias training annually. Maybe that's something we can do on a broader basis village-wide. So again, we're hoping that these measurable goals and action steps can be identified, incorporated into our strategic plan that was just approved last fall with this, the DEI as a strategic issue that we wanted to look at. And this is a perfect way to incorporate these goals moving forward. Did I go over my 5 minutes? Probably.
Of course not, Mark. No worries at all. No, this is perfect. We have about a half hour left, and we will use all of that time to wrangle some of the questions. Off the top of my head, I can respond to a couple of things right away. There will be an after action report as we complete this journey of discovery together. RGW will recommend that that report be shared in some capacity, whatever is most appropriate, with each of the agencies, obviously, to share with their stakeholdership so that that's available. We hear the wondering, Tim, about Butterfield Park District. That's something that I can talk with Dawn and Mark about as we move forward. So that's on our radar for sure. The other thing that I want you to know, a couple things. One, we will not get to all the questions today, but all of the questions are being compiled by my team and they will be included in the after action report, as many of the really good questions you're asking are going to continue to be relevant. So we will capture those and include them in the report. There will also be community listening sessions on January 26th. So we will continue to glean from the community those questions that you might have. There's a listening session from 10 to 11 on January 26th. There is an identical listening session from 7 to 8 on January 26th. Both of those community listening sessions will be held on Zoom. And I would ask that someone would share the link to the Glen Ellyn library calendar, as that is where you can find the information to sign up for those listening sessions on January 26th. On January 28th, from 1 p.m. to 8 p.m., there will be affinity groups being held also for us to continue our listening and mining for information around initiatives around diversity, equity, and inclusion. That same link for affinity groups will be on the Glen Ellyn Public Library site. And I can also share that link as we get into the questions. I'll put that link in the chat so that you can go there to get more information on how to participate on the 26th, on the 28th in an affinity group that's right for you. And then on January 30th, from 9 o'clock to 1 o'clock, we will have a strategic work session where all the community members can come into that space. And from 9 to 1 for 4 hours, we'll start to devise ideas, strategies, and plans. Some of you have started including those in this chat. This is being recorded, so we can certainly mine those as well. But there will be a time set aside, 4 hours on the morning of the 30th, for us to continue to strategize around some of these notions. So let's hop into some questions. And I'm gonna just go in the order that I received them. So Melissa Cunningham, where do families voice concerns and ideas specifically with grade school level District 89? Where do we go to voice concerns and questions about ideas there?
Yeah, so as we had talked about before, so we have an equity leadership team that is in the process of looking at our equity audit. And slowly we are going through the equity audit findings and then discussing what next steps we need to take at our board meetings. So these are going to be a continual part of our board meeting conversations. You are more than welcome to reach out to our administrators at a district level or even at a school level, excuse me, depending on the question. But also, as I said, these will be continual conversations that we're having at a board level. So attending those is also appropriate as well if there's questions that you have.
Thank you so much, Melissa. This question is open-ended for anyone to respond to. There's a request for the panelists to address your capacity in responding to pushback for this work around diversity, equity, and inclusion. How are you handling or responding to pushback? Anyone?
Well, Reesheda, maybe I can start. This is Brian Caputo from College DuPage. I think part of this is helped by the recognition that not everybody is starting from the same place and the same basis of understanding. So some pushback, if you will, that if you want to call it that we've received is really revolves around that idea. They haven't heard some of the terminology that's typically involved when you're talking about race relations. So it's an education process, and you have to. I think you have to be tolerant on both sides to understand that we need to go slow to some extent and understand that everyone needs to be educated and brought to some level of understanding so we can have a discussion and understand it also that it's not, we're here to do good, right? We're here to do well for all of our students, including those of color. So if you're operating from a place, as we are at the college, of that underlying principle, you can find a way to talk. So I would say that's what we're doing. When those question what we're doing, we have a bit of understanding that they just haven't been exposed to some of these issues.
Thank you so much, Brian. Anyone else want to share on that pushback question? Because it really is not a matter of if, it's more a matter of when it happens. And so if we have some more tangible, practical application, Dr. K, go for it.
Right. I think part of that is this work happening on such a large scale across the district, across the community. One of the things we talked about last time was just creating those safe spaces for.
Your sound went out, Dr. K. We can't hear you. Can you all hear me?
Yes, it's something on her end.
And educating the community so that each of us can have those conversations. So for us, this is key.
And the this and that you cut out for a little bit. So when you say this is key, what's the this? Right.
So I think opening up these conversations on a larger level really does set the stage that there is a commitment within the community so that each organization does their work. It doesn't come as a surprise to the community. It's connected to this larger work and this larger commitment.
Yes, I love what you shared there. In some ways, the response to that hesitancy is going to be the idea that there's a comprehensive strategy and a comprehensive way forward. The messaging in that will be a huge support to each of the agencies represented here because we're part of this larger body of work. Thank you so much for sharing that. I know that one of the questions is, can we get a copy of the PowerPoints? I know that, Don, if you could drop a note to me in the chat. I know that this entire process here is being recorded, and I'm curious about how other people might be able to access that, even if you weren't a part of the community today to be live with us. I imagine there's a way for us to do that.
Reesheda,
Yes,
can I jump in on that, just that last question?
absolutely.
Kelly Christensen texted me, I think, a very important component, and that is we're not introducing this DEI initiative in order to marginalize any group, and that's not the goal. We want to do this so we're all included. So I think that's well said, and I think we should keep that in mind.
Thank you so much for that. So there's this question. There's the statement that culture eats strategy for breakfast. What do you think can be done to shift a culture that is resistant to these kinds of changes?
I'm not sure how you want us to jump in, but I'm happy to jump in. I loved that comment and I couldn't agree more. So, again, part of this bigger work is about, establishing priorities and setting expectation. Culture's everything, within an organization. So strategies are just list of things that you may do, but it's establishing a culture that's going to move in that direction. So, it's about making those expectations clear. It's about educating people and giving the supports that they need, but ultimately holding people accountable within your organization that this is what we're about. And so sometimes people have to make a tough decision about, maybe I no longer fit what the culture of this organization is. Maybe sometimes the organization helps you figure out that you don't fit within that culture, but it is about setting an expectation and educating. And it certainly doesn't happen quickly, but, absolutely right. I mean, you can't get to the strategy work until you set the stage with the culture.
And
Very well said.
Oh,
go for it, Dr. Wilson.
Thanks. And if I could jump in, right? As an educator, I am determined to ensure that our students have the opportunities that they need to be successful, not only while they're with us pre-K-12, but after, and whatever that pathway looks like for students. And so are we affirming students, right, in that culture steeped in belonging, equity, diversity? Does every single student feel that embrace when they walk into our organizations, when they walk into our schools, our businesses, all of these, each other's homes, right? And have we done a really good job, whether it's as educators or the parents or the guardians of the day during the school day? Have we really done a good job of providing the multiple opportunities for students to be able to talk with different people, share different perspectives, share stories? Do you share stories with only the group of people that you feel comfortable with, that maybe are your neighbors, or do you intentionally make opportunities, whether it's, in the library, walking downtown, waiting for the train? Do you just say, hey, how are you? I noticed that pin you're wearing. What opportunities exist for us to normalize the conversation around who we are and what we want to be as a larger community? Because for Glen Ellyn to go from a project to diversity, equity, and inclusion is steeped in every single thing that we do. I believe that, I think the pushback is sometimes sometimes there's a hold on, well, I want it to be the way it's always been because that's worked for me. But I want you to know that someone, as a Black woman coming in and out of the community, I also want to know that there's an opportunity for me to be affirmed. There's an opportunity for BIPOC families, students across the spectrum to be affirmed when they walk in and out of this community.
Thank you, Dr. Wilson.
If it's okay, if I could add to that, but to echo what Dr. Wilson and Dr. K said as well, I think, as Dr. K had mentioned before too, it's building that foundation and understanding together, but also at the same time, it's making sure that we're providing opportunities for voice throughout that process as well. And obviously the component of is the strategic planning, but without that foundational piece and understanding together, it's really hard to get to those specific strategic steps that we need to put in place too. And I think, again, with what Brian Caputo was saying too, is that understanding that everyone is coming at this at a different entry level, but at the same time, we have the same values and beliefs that we're holding each other to, knowing that we need to get to that component. But again, accepting that people are coming at this from different entry levels too, and just the importance of making sure that they have a voice in the process so that we're building that understanding together.
Also, just know we're about at the midway point of our total trajectory together. Again, there are still 3 more connection points, one of which will be an affinity group that particularly listens as it pertains to the LGBTQIA+ community. So even if you haven't heard some things this morning, recognize that those affinity groups are going to mine for those particular subsets of historically, intentionally, traditionally marginalized people groups to mine even more specifically and deeply into their interests on the 28th of this month, which is next week, okay? I think that there are some moves to possibly put this, with speaker approval, this recording on YouTube so that people will have access to it beyond today. It will also be on the library website. We will have this, we will have another session. This is the leadership session. We're going to have an organizational session that runs through a similar framework from 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock. We're going to take an hour break and then come back and do organizations and give them an opportunity to share what they're up to from 1 to 3. So if you could tune back in, that would be great. Also encourage others to participate. This is still us mining for all the things we need to consider as we move forward in this work. There's a question for the schools. How are we making sure that people with different and various faith backgrounds feel like they belong? And I know this is kind of a tension to be managed with the separation of church and state. How will you all respond to ensuring that there is respect and that they're not silenced? Any one of you, please jump in.
Sure, I'll jump in. At the high school level, and of course, because students are a little bit older and a little bit more mature, that students, that they have a space to meet as a collective, and that we provide those opportunities, and really the students lead that. And so that allows us that opportunity, that we're not, encroaching with, the separation of church and state is there, but we're also saying, yes, of course, that is a huge part of you. And again, allowing students to bring their full and total selves into our buildings is what we will continue to work towards.
I might jump in. Similar to the high schools, we do have a recognition that all faith groups are accepted. We have specific organizations, student organizations, where they can meet and they can discuss and matters related to their faith. It's not that it's an institutional support per se, that we don't promote it in advance, that we make it available and students on their own organize. You did ask sort of another question. I think there was an embedded question, seemed to be at the end of your statement, about voices. Voices are heard. The College of DuPage has a very robust freedom of speech policy, and what we're trying to help all college community members is that help them understand their voices are welcome. They are heard. We are trying to be tolerant, and sometimes that's not always easy. Some folks don't want to hear what other folks have to say, but we're trying to make sure people understand that this needs to be a safe place for speech, and we need to respect each other.
Thank you so much, Dr. Caputo. We appreciate that. I want to ask another intersectional question that was put to us. How can the school libraries work together on these initiatives that the public library in Glen Ellyn is so powerfully organizing and initiating? Any intersections and connections that you can speak about there?
I I can jump in with that too. And so we've been working a lot with our local library, and luckily our school libraries work in close connection with the Glen Ellyn Public Library as well. But we've worked hard and budgeted to provide a variety of different books and resources for students from grade school to middle school that are diverse. And when it comes to curriculum planning, even this past summer, I've really looked into how are we incorporating more diverse book options into the classroom and the curriculum. So not only providing those books and those resources in the actual classroom library and promoting those, but also how can we integrate those as part of our curriculum as well too, purposely throughout the year, and in, like I said, various different grade levels as well. So it's definitely an ongoing initiative in that way of making sure that we're providing books, but like I said, also building that connection between our curriculum and the books in our library as well.
Thank you. Others on that topic?
And at the high school, very similar to what Melissa said, our 4 librarians and obviously our 2 that are in a Glen Ellyn work closely with a public library, and also with our Glenbard family and parent series when there is a community read, and ensuring that those materials, supplemental materials, additional materials that tie to the curriculum are all, has been a really great collaboration for us in that angle. In addition to, we also complete an in-house author and novel audit in our English departments to also ensure, right, whose voice is being heard, and when students have choice, what does that choice look like, and then what our anchor texts are. So we also do that, and then are in conjunction and maintain that communication with the public library to ensure that students not only, as we issued iPads, students have it on their iPad, but also if they would like to check it out, what other resources do we have, and have that sharing component.
Right. Reesheda, just to maybe jump in, I think we've talked about what we're doing each individually as districts, but I also think the one thing to emphasize is that we're extremely fortunate in DuPage to be part of the DuPage County Regional Office of Education, and they have been doing extremely robust work in the area of DEI for some years now. So it's not only what we learn from each other, in proximity to each other, the districts within our community, but also that we have a support network to learn from and share ideas and share resources happening on a very large level in this county. And so it's something we don't get the opportunity to talk about a great deal. But I'm extremely proud of what our regional office has done in this area just to help districts move forward.
Thank you so much, Dr. K. There is a question for Mark specifically about the notion of the police department's composition being aligned to the demographics of the town. Is there equal representation in a way that mirrors the demographics of Glen Ellyn?
Yeah, a fair question. We've looked at it more holistically, village-wide. I can't say we've done it department by department. Just anecdotally, we've had some success recently in improving in the gender arena. And I know we've got a number of BIPOC officers, but I don't have those numbers handy. And I think that's something that's why we want to look at our recruitment strategy and identify some goals and incorporate that in our long-term plan.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your transparency and your response. Part of the reason why we're here is because we recognize that we have work to do. And a lot of the questions you're asking, we're going to not only compile them as a part of the report, but we will organize them based on the agency that is most suited to include them in their actionized way forward. So even if you don't hear your exact specific response on the call today, know that it will be included in the comprehensive report, and that it will be the questions will be disaggregated based on the agency who is most appropriate to respond. Okay. Let me see. Have you considered studying the history of systemic racism in this country as a foundation to future progress? Implicit bias training is good, but I'm not sure if it's enough on its own.
I can jump in real quickly. We embarked with the high school's program this fall, I think it was, that Glenbard Parent Series recommended the book Stomped, and then had the author out to speak to the community, and he was fantastic. We've had our management team all read that book as a kind of a first step towards creating a foundation of discussion. So that's a recent initiative that we participated in.
Thank you. Others?
Our at the high schools, our social studies department chairs have embarked on a journey looking at what we are teaching, how much we are teaching, and how centric and whose stories are being left out and whose stories are being affirmed in history. And there was a recent Illinois legislation that was passed in regards to ensuring that we have stories through the LGBTQIA lens, and then also looking at the state of Illinois has recently adopted culturally relevant teaching standards, and that's going to infiltrate every single piece of curriculum in all those areas as well. And so that is right. Those are some areas in which we can start and then continue to move forward.
Thank you, Dr. Wilson. Mark, I'm going to ask you that question out loud right now because it's come up a couple of times. Can you elaborate on what constitutes affordable housing? Is it permanent housing, apartments, condos, standalone homes? How do you respond?
Yes, I was just typing a response to that one. I am not an expert. That's why we are creating a housing task force, but it's my understanding that it's all of the above. But that's one of the things we're going to be tasked with is evaluating in more detail, where we have gaps. I know age and place housing is something we've been talking about for many years. Anecdotally, again, we don't have necessarily data points, but we know some of our seniors are downsizing and leaving town because they can't find housing. That's also an issue we want to address. So we've got some work to do there, and the board started that conversation. I think it was in November, and the next step is to put a task force together and go from there.
And Mark, just a quick aside, I can't remember Michelle's last name, but she's the executive director for Housing Forward in Oak Park. She would be a wonderful resource. And so some of what is going to be beautiful about this is that RGW does this work all over the country. And so as you start to look at specific areas as it pertains to DEI, we also have folks we can connect you to who might be a wonderful resource in that particular area of DEI work. There's one other question from M. Sinek, who is running for village president. They say, I would like your collective input on what is the one thing we can do now at the municipal government level to promote diversity, equity, equality, and inclusion in our village. I'm going to leave this one wide open because this is a perfect ending question. What's one thing?
Maybe I'll start, Reesheda. I think at least one part of this, and we kind of use this phrase on campus, is understanding that this is a bit of a movement, not a minute. So obviously we've had some national tragedies occur that have gotten certain people very focused on this, but that kind of attention can dissipate very quickly, and that's not what you want, right? If you're really earnest about the equity work, this is something that is a very methodical, long-term effort. So I think persistence is a part of it, and incorporating what I said earlier, understanding not everybody's at the same place. So part of that persistence is bringing everybody to some sort of common understanding and moving forward with strategic goals in this regard. That would be my reaction.
Thank you so much. Anyone else?
Hey, Reesheda, I'll jump in. I think just at a baseline level, I think we just have to start speaking to each other. I think we have to be honest, transparent, and candid about the discussions that we have. I think we have to have a baseline for where to start and where do we go from here. And I think once we have that baseline, then we can input suggestions on how to move forward. But I think just starting off, we have to talk to each other, and we have to talk in a way that we're open, we're not criticizing, and just be candid about and honest with yourselves and what we need to do to move forward.
I feel like that was the tandem, right? Dr. Caputo certainly lent us to the strategic institutional way of looking at what we've done and where we're headed. That's certainly a strategic aspect of the work. And Andre pulled us right back into that personal hard work that we're going to have to engage in: vulnerability, authenticity, transparency. Those two pieces will always be significant, and we will have more tangible, practical application responses to that question as we move forward in developing the report. I want to just close us out by saying the work is already happening. RGW is here, but you can hear from all of the panelists this morning that the work has been happening. Some of the panelists started as far back as 2002 and what they've shared. And so I want you all to know that this is not a new thing, that Glen Ellyn has been at work at this, and now we're doubling down in our efforts. And so let's applaud each other in that as we continue to do what we know is an arduous task ahead. Thank you all so much for joining us. We look forward to some of you coming back in an hour. Go eat a good lunch, and we'll see you again at 1 o'clock. Thank you all so much.